Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 3 has come full circle in a Miyagi-Do way back to its roots. The show ended, in my opinion, with a brilliant send-off, and with that out of the way, let's talk about what you missed in Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 3. Spoilers ahead if you haven't watched it yet. Let's break down the Easter eggs episode by episode. Episode 11's title, Into the Fire, has a few meanings. It's a nod to Kwan's funeral, the tough decision Kim Da-eun has to make, and the decision Johnny and Daniel face if they decide to agree to re-enter the Sekai Taikai. As the funeral begins, we see Kwan's gi and headband on the coffin as he's to be cremated. Kim Da-eun mentions that he had no family, giving Kwan a similar characteristic to others before him in that he found guidance and parental figures through his senseis. We also get some flashbacks to the previous episode Unjang-do, as we're given a stabbing refresher of what happened. Sorry, I had to. Master Kim Sung-young makes his return after not having been seen since the episode Sleeper. What I like about this transition during the Cobra Kai logo with the blurry fade out is that it reminds me of the Kung Fu films from the 70s. One of the pamphlets that Counselor Blatt hands Robbie is to Midway Industrial Training, the MIT Brooks clarified he was going to in the episode The Prize, though in that episode it was called Midwest Industrial Training. The pamphlet has a nearly one-for-one recreation of Johnny on the ladder in the Season 1 episode, Ex-Degenerate. Speaking of Season 1, instead of gifting each customer a bonsai, Daniel has decided to take them away in this parallel. Louis claims he's a southpaw, a nod to Rocky Balboa who fought in that stance, and as we know, the LaRussos and Balboas are Italian. Daniel mentions selling a car to someone who works admissions at UCLA, one of the colleges he mentioned he'd like Sam to go to in the Season 4 episode, Then Learn Fly. Although it's unconfirmed if it's Tahiti or not, it seems at the very least Gunther is getting a massage just like Kreese did in Karate Kid Part 3. Master Kim Sung-young becomes part of the list as he states it in Korean. He shows off a scroll that looks similar to the one Anthony looks at in the episode Minefields, though the techniques are different. Captain Turner is mentioned by Master Kim, and we get some flashbacks to the Season 3 episodes King Cobra and December 19th. We see Terry Silver on his yacht, the one Ezra mentioned he had left in Blood In and Blood Out. Silver is seen taking his medicine, possibly the same prescription he had in the episode Then Learn Fly. Kim Sung-young prepares something for Kim Da-eun's bruises, which looks very similar to Mr. Miyagi's new foot powder. We also see the return of Vanessa LaRusso, who ironically does not remember Johnny despite the two meeting on prom night, though Johnny recognizes her from the nightclub the night they took out Silver. Sheila, a longtime LaRusso auto employee, also makes her return. I believe the last episode she was in was Bicephaly at the birthday party. Vanessa talks to Amanda and gives an analysis of Daniel just as she did with Anthony in Party Time. In a nod to Johnny throwing down the plant and Silver knocking some over in Downward Spiral, Daniel himself drops the bonsai this time. During the test drive, this time Johnny is in the passenger seat of a crazy driver in a reversal of events where he drove and Daniel was in the passenger seat in pursuit of the Chop Shop goon in the episode Nature vs. Nurture. When Kreese and Kim Da-eun share a drink, we get a flashback to their flashback in the episode Bad Eggs. As Amanda tells Daniel about Sam's decision to not go to UCLA, she apologizes for the Band-Aid rip, the same method Johnny wanted to use to tell the kids that he and Daniel could not work together in the episode Let's Begin. Following this, we see Daniel repairing the bonsai the same way Mr. Miyagi did in Karate Kid Part 3. It's worth noting that when Daniel and Johnny talk to Silver, this time they're on the same side of the table compared to being on opposite ends in Different But Same. LaRusso assumes that Silver's motive is still revenge, the same motive that Terry had in 1985. However, Terrence makes a parallel to what Kreese said in a few scenes before. Neither of them has real homes as they've both lost almost everything. We see a flashback to the episode Survivors as the once thought confirmed to be deleted plotline where Terry Silver was sick is now back and confirmed. As Terry leaves, we see a similar shot to the one where he left Miyagi-Do with a grin on his face in Karate Kid Part 3, though this time he doesn't seem as confident. Master Kim asks his granddaughter the same thing he asked her in 1980. You attack your own grandfather? Though she puts up a good fight at first, Kim Da-eun is brought to her knees as Kreese was in the Season 3 finale. We see a flashback in comparison of Kim Da-eun once again being choked by her grandfather. After all of this occurs, she tells Kreese that he still has time to be a good person and a good sensei. This is a parallel to two different episodes. The Season 2 episode Take a Right, where Tommy tells Johnny he still has time, and the Season 5 episode Head of the Snake, where Dr. Folsom tells Kreese he still has time to make up for his mistakes. Near the end of the episode, Daniel tells Amanda he has plans for early retirement on the party planning, mirroring Mr. Miyagi's plans for Daniel's tournament career, early retirement. Episode 12's title, Rattled, has a few meanings. It's a nod to the intertwining stories where both Robbie and Tori are in their own heads on different aspects of the Sekai Taikai. It also alludes to a baby rattle, as near the end of the episode we see the birth of baby Laura. It can also be a nod to Chozen being rattled by Kumiko's feelings for him as a friend. The episode starts off with a montage of Tori, Sam, and Robbie training for the Sekai Taikai, mirroring the opening montage of the different dojos training in the Season 4 episode, The Fall. The All Valley board members make a return, though this time without Ron, as they did mention in the same episode they would vote him no confidence. It turns out that Daryl's favorite blue mats are cut, and the tournament is bringing back the classic 80s red mats. Daryl also takes offense to Gunther being the master of ceremonies, just like he took issue with Ron at the 51st All Valley. We get a recreation of the male scene from Karate Kid Part 2, down to the mispronunciation of the name, the "oh excuse me," registered letter from Okinawa, and "someplace you have out here." It's also a nice parallel where Chozen, like Miyagi, got a letter from his love interest. Daniel makes a mention of Chozen's favorite drink, Long Island iced tea. Amanda has the idea to set up Chozen with Winnie Taylor, similar to how Jessica Andrews set up both Amanda and Daniel. She also jokes that they're not getting married, similar to how Daniel joked with Sam that he wasn't going to walk her down the aisle when they talked about Kyler in Strike First. Johnny mentions to Carmen that Ubers can be crapshoots, a nod to his previous job in the episode Downward Spiral. When Hawk greets Robbie, he mimics Gunther's way of announcing Sekai Taikai. Winnie is revealed to be Moon's mom and is played by Elizabeth Berkley, who played Jesse Spano on Saved by the Bell. We see the return of Bobby Brown and his church for the first time since the Season 3 episode, Now You're Gonna Pay. As he and Johnny talk, the latter mentioned that the last time things felt right was when he won the 83 All Valley before being dethroned by Daniel the following year. Although it may be a bit of a stretch, Robbie using VR equipment to train could be a nod to some notable VR games out there, such as Thrill of the Fight, Creed Rise to Glory, and one of my personal favorites, Dragon Fist Kung Fu VR, as all are fight simulators. When Tori and Sam visit the All Valley Arena, we get a few callbacks. The two are alone just like Daniel and Sam were in the episode Obstaculos. Sam makes mention that her dad is a board member, and they also talk about the last time they were here when they were fighting each other in the finals. When Dimitri and Hawk argue about their system, the former says, "I'm going to pretend you didn't say that," the same thing both Johnny and Daniel said to Miguel about not knowing certain bands. During Sam and Tori's sparring, LaRusso takes down Nichols the same way Johnny took down Daniel, and how Hawk scored the final point on Robbie in Season 4. When explaining her reasons for quitting, Tori mentions being manipulated by Kreese, destroying her friendships and her relationship with Robbie. Johnny mentions Sid when showing off his mother's ring, rest in peace Ed Asner, saying that he got soft in comparison to being a cold old man in the episode Now You're Gonna Pay. Rosa says, "If come from you, always right," mirroring Mr. Miyagi's quote, "If come from inside you, always write one." During the tarot reading, Winnie mentions both past and future events. She talks about Chozen's fight with Daniel in Karate Kid Part 2, foreshadowing the deaths of Kreese and Silver, and Kim Da-eun, who Chozen thinks about as a flashback. We also get another nod to a previous scene where Chozen and Winnie say Kari. As Sam and Tori trade advice, she mentions that Mr. Miyagi was her grandfather, a nice reference to the episode The Right Path, where Mr. Miyagi tells Yukie in a letter that Samantha makes her feel like he is her Tanmei. Nichols says don't keep secrets as her advice, something she regretted in Season 5 as she told Kreese. One of my favorite and lovely parallels to the previous seasons is that Johnny is there at the hospital, learning from his mistake of abandoning Shannon and Robbie. The string trio plays Take My Breath Away by Berlin, a song from the film Top Gun, a favorite film of Carmen's. We also finally get an answer to a question. Daniel and Bobby are on good terms, even after what happened during the 1984 All Valley semifinals. During Bobby's monologue, we see Tori and Sam kick each other at the same time as Hawk and Miguel did at the 51st All Valley. Amanda and Daniel fist bump each other like the Jersey Tough fist bump. One of my favorite details is that compared to wearing all black at the end of Season 3, Johnny is wearing both white and black, showing that Johnny is balanced. Finally, we hear that Johnny and Carmen decide to name their new daughter, Laura, after Johnny's mom. Episode 13's title, Skeletons, refers to Daniel's dream where he and Mr. Miyagi fight the skeletons. It is also the English translation of Esqueleto and is parallel to Season 1, Episode 3, as this is Episode 13 of Season 6, 1-3. The episode opens up with an ESPN-like montage, appropriately having sportscasters Kevin Burkhardt and Super Bowl champion and NFL analyst Ryan Clark. Another long-time question is answered since the original film ended with Johnny handing the trophy to Daniel. How does that affect Cobra Kai the show? We see unused footage of the ending as it shows Johnny heartbroken, both holding onto the trophy and after handing it over. Daniel mentions bringing Mr. Miyagi's teachings to the world, something he wanted to do when talking with Amanda during Peacetime in the Valley. Terry Silver talks about how he and Mr. Miyagi shared a student, a nod to his convoluted plot in Karate Kid Part 3. His rigging of the All Valley in Season 4 is also mentioned. Something I should have noted in my Part 2 breakdown is that Fang Xiao, known as Sensei Wolf, is likely a nod to D2 The Mighty Ducks, where the antagonistic coach is named Wolf Stanson, who was played by Carsten Norgard, who plays Gunther in Cobra Kai. We get some flashback footage of Tori hijacking the livestream in Blood In, Blood Out, as Zara talks about it on screen. Ryan's great name for a dojo is likely a reference to Daryl saying a badass name for a dojo, which is also the title of a song on the Season 1 soundtrack. Ryan also paraphrases another quote, "It's almost karate time." As the brothers arrive at the All Valley Arena, Robbie and Miguel briefly reminisce about their finals in the 50th All Valley Tournament. Kreese talks to Johnny and mentions how he was saved from Terry Silver, and the two talk about what happened the last time they were in this parking lot, as we see unused and alternate footage from the Karate Kid Part 2. We also finally see footage of Johnny saying, "You're alright, LaRusso." At long last, Daryl Vidal finally makes his appearance as a special guest referee. Despite being fearful of them, Amanda becomes a crazy karate mom like Patricia was in Season 1. As Silver looks in the mirror, we hear a callback to his conversation with Ezra in Blood In and Blood Out on how Miyagi-Do and Eagle Fang ruined his reputation. Axel brings back his classic angry nose twitch when he stares at Robbie, something he did when staring at Miguel in Barcelona. Chris and Mitch make a return, not having been seen since the Best of the Best, and to top it all off, Muscles is no longer his nickname. After the first round, Daniel coaches Robbie and mentions all the good that he's done, standing up to Kreese and Silver, becoming friends with Miguel, and making amends with his dad. After the second round, we get a Rocky IV reference when Johnny tells his son he's not a machine. Axel gives one as well when he says Robbie has adapted, similar to how Ivan Drago tells his coach that Rocky is like a piece of iron. We get a callback to the first Karate Kid film when Wolf tells Axel to break his knee, a modern-day version of Sweep the Leg, with Axel looking shocked like Johnny did. This further plays out like Bobby versus Daniel, though Robbie's knee is broken, not just struck. Parallels that are seen include Johnny staring at Wolf as Miyagi looked at Kreese, and the locker room scene playing out almost just like the first Karate Kid film, with the doctor having the same dialogue and Daniel shouting "damn it." It's revealed that the heat massage Mr. Miyagi used to do is not magic and that Robbie's knee needs time to heal. The scene also recreates the same shot where Shannon and Tori are standing in place of Lucille and Allie. Despite all of this, Robbie reflects that karate has given him his friends, girlfriend, and his father. As Sam trains later that night, Daniel comments that she's looking Jersey tough. She mentions that she couldn't sleep, just like Kenny burning the midnight oil in Season 5. Underneath his hoodie, Daniel was wearing a San Diego's Charger jersey like he wore on Halloween back in '84. In his dream, he practices standing the deck as Mr. Miyagi taught him, but is ambushed by skeletons, a nod to his fight with Johnny in Cobra Kai after the dance. We even hear audio of various Cobra Kai members during this sequence, including Dutch, Silver, Kreese, Johnny, and Tommy. However, Mr. Miyagi appears and comes to Daniel's aid just as LaRusso needed when he was younger and begins to fight. We see some of the same moves he pulled off, such as the jumping knees and the low kick Miyagi gave to Kreese in Karate Kid Part 3. Daniel and Miyagi in the same stance that Miyagi ended the Halloween fight with before having a heart-to-heart. Nariyoshi reminds him that winning or losing doesn't matter and that he doesn't need to fight anymore. LaRusso bestows this wisdom on his daughter and reminds her of one of the lessons he learned out on the lake. He trains so he doesn't have to fight. In a parallel to the episode The Rise, Johnny confronts Kreese in the hallways again, with the two standing on the same sides they were in the parking lot during Karate Kid Part 2. A nice detail I noticed here is that when Kreese tries to touch Johnny twice to comfort him, Lawrence is still paranoid and knocks the hand away the first time and flinches the second time. When the two hug, this is also a nice callback to The Rise, when Johnny and Robbie finally made amends as well. And one of the best parallels of the series yet, just as Kreese took away Cobra Kai from Johnny in Season 2, he rightfully gives it back, where Johnny, Miguel, and Tori return in their classic Season 1 and Season 4 attire respectfully. Kreese smiles at Tori from afar off, like Miyagi smiling at Daniel during the original Karate Kid film's ending, and Johnny and Kreese bow to each other out of respect as teacher and student. Strike last is the opposite of strike first, the first part of the Cobra Kai mantra and the title of Season 1, Episode 2. It also foreshadows the end of the episode where Kreese technically gets the last strike during his final fight with Silver. The episode opens with something we haven't seen before, Daniel and Johnny driving in the former's car. We see Arts Delicatessen as one of the locations they drive past, a location that Sid wanted Rhonda to call in Ex-Degenerate. Johnny states that Daniel missed the turn, mirroring Robbie asking Daniel where they were going in the episode Mercy, though instead of going to Miyagi-Do, they return to Johnny's original dojo location, a location we haven't seen since the episode The Rise. To make amends for raising the rent in the past, Daniel talked down Zarkarian, the landlord, and bought the dojo for Johnny in his name, just like Silver bought Cobra Kai for Kreese. LaRusso also mentions that it's appropriate training as Tori and Miguel started training here, and the two bow on the mat in comparison to the face-off they had in Strike First. Although it may not be a direct reference, I believe Wolf and Silver training Axel is supposed to be an homage to Kreese and Silver training Barnes, which makes sense as Silver bought a champion once again in the present day. Miguel stands at attention as he did in Strike First, and he and Tori are back in their classic training gis. Johnny makes the reference that Miguel was his first student and he was Tori's first sensei, and also mentions that he taught them the style of karate that was taught to me, something he promised he would teach Diaz at the end of Ex-Degenerate. Sensei Lawrence puts them through push-ups on their knuckles, imagining their opponent's face on the training dummy, pad training, and blocking and striking using the pitching machine. Both Tori and Miguel are seen breaking the boards just as some of the dojos did during the All-Valley Skills competition. After training, Johnny and Miguel are seen sitting outside just like they did in the episode Molting. Johnny also shares his pizza, something he grabbed from the mini-mart in Ex-Degenerate. During their conversation, he comes clean about the fight and that Daniel beat him because he was fighting for, not against, the same lesson Chosen taught Sam in Taikai. Lawrence also mentions that LaRusso didn't want him or the guys to think that they got the best of him, just as he told Miyagi that he wanted to find balance that way. Johnny and Miguel reminisce on how in a few months Diaz had Pepto-Bismol as a hat and then became the All-Valley champ, calling him Miguel fucking Diaz like Daniel called his old rival Mike fucking Barnes. Sam teaches Tori the drum technique just like she taught Miguel in Feel the Night, and tells Nichols to ask the drum if there's a counterpunch in the technique, something Daniel also asked Mr. Miyagi in Karate Kid Part 2. Tori recounts meeting Aisha and Sam on the same day, getting led back into the school, joining Miyagi-Do, and then rejoining Cobra Kai, but still being forgiven. Amanda tells her what she told Robbie in the moment of truth. We all make mistakes, and Daniel finishes with, what matters is how we acknowledge and move on from them. Johnny tells Nichols to keep her head in the game, the same advice Silver gave her before her match with Sam. Moon reappears for the first time in person since Downward Spiral, though she did make an appearance via video in Snakes on a Plane. Miguel gives a card to Sam that says, "You occupy my thoughts," a similar card that Sam gave to Miguel in the hospital in Season 3. As he and Tori talk to Johnny, Diaz says Silver is not going to buy another title, alluding to the events of Season 4. As they talk on the mat, Zara mentions to Tori that Robbie is another notch in her belt, alluding to the events of Snake on a Plane. Like her sensei, and as she did in Season 4, Tori's once again on the left side of the mat, if you're looking from the crowd's perspective. One of the points that Zara lands is the same way that Tori got a point and won her finals match against Sam. When Nichols gets in her own head, Johnny advises her to flip the script, one of his famous pieces of advice he gave to Eli in the episode Quiver. Robbie and Tori finally make amends and profess their love for one another in a parallel to the episode Head of the Snake, with Keen adding an F-bomb to the No Mercy like he did to It's My Dad in the episode Cobra Kai Never Dies. Because of this, Tori finds her balance and gets into a Miyagi-Do stance, similar to Sam's in the episode The Rise. Zara tries to fake out Tori like she once did to Sam, but this does not work. The Miyagi-Do reference continues as Nichols uses the drum technique on Zara and ends the fight with a flying tornado kick. Tori's prediction from Snakes on a Plane comes true. Zara is knocked out on the mat next to her teeth. This is also a reference to when Tori knocked out the Polar Slog girls captain's tooth and Dog in the fight. Nichols then welcomes her to the Valley, the same way she was welcomed to Barcelona. I also thought this shot was a reference to Friday with the classic, "You got knocked the fuck out." Tori's journey comes full circle. She is now a legitimate champion in front of her hometown crowd with no rigging involved this time. As Daniel and Silver talk, LaRusso says the underdog wins decisively, a reference to him telling Anthony the underdog's always got a shot. Terry fires back that he would love to see the look on your sensei's face, just as Kreese once told Daniel, "Wish I could see the look on the little bastard's face." Daniel was also called Danny Boy, the famous nickname he got from Terry when he asked him to do the crane against Mike Barnes. However, in one of the sickest burns I've seen in the series, Daniel tells Silver that Cobra Kai never dies, mocking the little time he has left. Diaz gets into the classic stance and yells "Ice" as he did in Season 1. After Miguel's knockdown, Axel brings back the winning stance that we saw after his fight with Quan and Yoon. The pep talk that Johnny has with Miguel is reminiscent of Miyagi snapping Daniel back to reality during Karate Kid Part 3. Johnny even says, "Give him the best 2 minutes of karate you got," mirroring what Miyagi said to Daniel about his best karate is still inside. He also quotes part of his own speech from The Rise in that everything Miguel has learned has led up to this moment. We also get a flashback to Johnny saying to go all in, as we'll get more flashbacks during the next round. Finally, Miguel dons the black headband once again, though this time officially with his gi. Previously, there had been promotional material for Season 2 where he wore the headband with his gi, as we know he wore the black headband in LOL, but he has never been seen in the show with this attire. Sensei Lawrence tells Miguel, "You're Cobra Kai," the same thing he said as he ended his speech in the episode Mercy before Diaz lets out that iconic yell. Rosa also takes part in the crazy Karate Mom gimmick as she yells out in Spanish. Wolf tells Axel to target Miguel's spine, a reference to the school brawl in No Mercy. However, Kovacevic responds to Wolf by saying, "I can beat him," similar to Bobby saying, "But Sensei, I can beat this guy." As Miguel locks in, we get flashbacks to his training in counterbalance, where he bloodies Axel's nose as Daniel did to Johnny on the beach. We then see the kicking training in Esqueleto and the fight between Miguel and Robbie during the episode Mercy. Unlike Bobby and Johnny, Axel defies his sensei and changes history, not relying on attacking an injury. In retaliation, Miguel delivers either a flying tornado kick or the same kick he did on post at the 51st All Valley. We see him dodge like he did at Valley Fest, land on his feet like he did during his fight with Kyler, matching kicks like he did with Hawk, unleashes another flying tornado-like kick, recalls how he was able to walk again, and delivers a final tornado kick as he would have done during his fight with Hawk. In comparison to Season 1, we get a much happier celebration with Johnny and the others, as Miguel has become a champion for the second time at the All Valley Arena. Both he and Tori are on stage showing their trophies off, as they were both All Valley champions for Cobra Kai at one point. We get another reference to Karate Kid Part 2, where Axel stands up to Sensei Wolf and leaves, with no one being choked out this time. The Sekai Taikai ending in a draw is similar to how Hawk and Robbie had to go to sudden death overtime, with even a similar announcement that Gunther gives being, "For the first time in our history." Johnny and Daniel talk on the side of the mat similar to the episode Mercy, though this time they are working together instead of against each other. Dennis returns, not having been seen since Ungjangdo, and it's revealed that he was the one who burned down the furniture store. Silver remarks that the yacht is not yours yet, echoing Daniel saying to Johnny, "Take it easy, this car isn't technically yours yet, and different but same." In his last reveal, Kreese is standing there with a cigar, compared to his first appearance in Mercy where he was in the shadows. Terry even mentions that John always loved lurking in the shadows. It's also worth noting that Kreese beat and ended Dennis off screen, just as he did with Eric and Grigor in King Cobra. Silver once again mentions Johnny as being Kreese's weakness, the reason he betrayed him in The Rise. John manages to have Silver in the same arm lock he had Daniel in during the episode Extreme Measures. Terry remarks that Kreese has been fighting his whole life, something we saw him mention for the first time in the flashback Nature vs. Nurture, and the fight appropriately ends with a cheesy one-liner and explosion as Kreese completes Terry Silver's no with a mercy. Episode 15's title is appropriately named Ex-Degenerate, which is what Johnny said to Tommy in response to being called an Ex-Degenerate in the first film. It's also appropriately fitting as the very first episode was called Ex-Degenerate. The episode's introductory scene is very heartbreaking as Johnny's Applebee incident just happened and he visited his mother's grave right before he met Miguel. The scene could also be a nod to Daniel visiting Mr. Miyagi's grave in Counterbalance. We also see a picture of Laura and Johnny when they were younger, and in the present day, like Sam and Kenny, Johnny could not sleep because of the upcoming fight. When Lawrence holds Laura, it reminds me of the shot of Rocky holding Rocky Jr. in Rocky II before he goes training, which is what we see what happens next with Johnny. We get flashbacks to Ungjangdo where Johnny was fighting Wolf, and it starts to affect his training. Chosen advises that Johnny should conserve his energy, the same advice he gave to Sam in Taikai. We also see Lawrence perform the flying tornado kick himself, a movie taught to Miguel, Sam, and Tori. Outside of the dojo, when Johnny confides in Daniel, this reminds me of the pep talk Adrian gives to Rocky as Rocky admits he's afraid to fight again. Fittingly, Rocky is brought up as even though he lost in the first film, he still won in the end. We finally hear "You're the best around" as it plays during a Rocky-style montage. Daniel and Johnny train on the beach like Rocky and Apollo, down to where Johnny outruns Daniel and they splash each other in the water. They both practice the crane kick like Daniel and Miyagi did in the first film. Johnny and Daniel are also run by LaRusso's old apartment complex and are joined by the fans just like Rocky was in Rocky 2. Appropriately, they're running down the streets of the valley, mirroring Johnny driving down the streets of the valley in Ex-Degenerate, bringing it all full circle. Later that night, the family has Miguel and Carmen over like they did and Then Learn Fly, though this time Miguel and Sam talk about making their dreams come true instead of being unsure about the future as Miguel got into Stanford. Lucille also makes her return, not having been seen since party time, and elaborates on what happened with Mr. Miyagi's past. He was given a pearl necklace that belonged to his mother by his father and gave it to his wife. When his wife passed away, the guard stole it and Mr. Miyagi took it back. The guard attacked him, but as always, Mr. Miyagi defeated him in self-defense. In a callback to Karate Kid Part 2 after Daniel won the All Valley, Tori and Robbie signed their first autographs. As Devin predicted in the episode Tai Kai, Tori and Robbie both get a happy ending where they get sponsorships with life-changing money. This also comes full circle for Keen as he wanted the world to know that he could have won. Yasmin makes her in-person return, having last been seen in Underdogs, though via video format in Snakes on a Plane, and forgives Dimitri. In the locker room, Johnny holds his fist out like he did in Ex-Degenerate, though is confronted by Wolf like Dutch confronting Daniel in the first Karate Kid film. Lawrence is treated like Daniel was in Extreme Measures before he and Sensei Wolf go out on the mat. Just like old times, Daryl announces that it's karate time. We also see the return of Lyle and Nestor, as we last saw Lyle in Peacetime in the Valley, and if you're watching this, stay tuned for my interview with Matt Borlenghi, and Nestor making his return from Kicks Get Chicks. As Cobra Kai is being introduced, Miguel yells out the dojo's name as he did in Mercy, and the dojo comes running in. For the first time, Daniel dons an official Cobra Kai tournament gi. Just like in 1984, Johnny is on the left side of the mat in a championship match. Though just like that match, he is the first one to be down a point. Daniel and Chosen note that they have a Karate Kid Part 3 situation on their hands. Johnny is afraid. Wolf tells Johnny, "Come on, old man," mirroring Terry Silver telling Miyagi, "Come on, little man." Lawrence is hit in the back of the head once more and is being toyed with as Barnes did to Daniel, making it hurt. History repeats itself as Johnny's nose is bleeding once more and is told to go to his sensei. Lawrence mirrors Diaz by telling Daniel that Wolf is too fast and too strong, and eventually is down 2-0 like the final match of the Karate Kid. However, Daniel's pep talk reminds Johnny that pain, defeat, and fear do not exist in this dojo. As Johnny scores this point, we see YouTuber Balin Levine in the audience who worked with some of the cast in the Cobra Kai movie on his channel. As the fight continues, Sensei Wolf goes for the Shaolin Sunset. However, Johnny thinks back to the '84 All Valley as we see some more unused footage and changes course, thinking about Daniel's advice, who nods in approval like Mr. Miyagi did. Classically, Lawrence sweeps the legs and almost lands the punch point like he did with Daniel. Sensei Wolf bows out of respect just like Robbie did to Miguel after their match. Johnny is held up on his shoulders like Kenny was held up in the episode Blood In, Blood Out, and we get another Rocky reference where Carmen and Johnny tell each other, "I love you." When holding up the trophy, Johnny calls over to Daniel to celebrate together as Daniel says, "You're alright, Lawrence," mirroring the ending of the first film. Sweet Child O' Mine plays in the background as we get a montage mirroring that of Peacetime in the Valley. Little Stevie returns, who is now Johnny's landlord. Sam is gifted a sai, a weapon she used in the All Valley skills demonstration. Hawk finally has the Sentra with the blue racing stripe as he told Miguel he would in Mercy Part 2. And to Wendy's prediction, Chosen visits Kim Da-eun to continue their romance. In a nod to Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, Johnny and the dojo make the cover of Sports Illustrated. A touching parallel is seen from the start of the episode where Lawrence visits his mother's grave once again but places gifts this time, which could be a parallel to Rocky Balboa. As she's telling her family goodbye, Sam tells Anthony there's a hidden box of Uncrustables, a nod to the snack she was eating and playing with fire. Daniel and Sam share one last Jersey Tough, but this time it's Valley Tough. In one of my favorite callbacks to Karate Kid Part 2, like Daniel joining Miyagi, Miguel joins Sam on her flight to Okinawa. It's also revealed she's still wearing the necklace he gave her in Season 5. Due to the dojo's newfound success, like in Counterbalance, there is once again a line out the door. We also see Baby Red, who is presumably the younger brother of Big and Little Red. Stingray makes one final appearance as he is part of Cobra Kai and still has his car. Johnny is back in the dojo with his new recruits like he was in Season 1, with Kenny, Anthony, and Devin at the front of the class. He mentions that the last time he was here, he was coming to the terms with the words on the wall, a nod to his "life is not black and white" speech in Glory of Love. In contrast to Kreese saying, "There is one way," he mentions that there is no one way. Sensei Lawrence, of course, recounts the creed of Cobra Kai: strike first, strike hard, no mercy, all lessons he taught in season 1, and that, like his sensei, does not train to be merciful here. Near the fake-out ending, Johnny mimics Kreese by saying, "I can't hear you," and smiles as he did at the end of Quiver. We see two of the big three, as Hayden played Ezra, John and Josh, talk about their idea to make a Back to the Future spin-off, a nod to how they pitched the idea of Cobra Kai to Billy and Ralph. When talking about the All Valley, Daniel and Johnny decide to trade students, a stark contrast to underdogs when they would argue about either Devin or Anthony making the team. We see a flashback to the catching flies with chopsticks scene from the original film, though Johnny ruins this moment by getting the final word in and saying no mercy. It's a hilarious and fitting double meaning, as Daniel did not get rid of Cobra Kai after all. I'll briefly talk about my overall thoughts and correct predictions. First, there were repercussions that Master Kim Sung-young enforced, though none as more severe as the idea to end Kreese. For the future of the kids, I was partially right. We did see what happened to what they were going to do after high school, and Tori and Robbie are together in a martial arts capacity, just not teaching. Kumiko did reach out to Chosen, though only to confirm that they were still friends and nothing else, leaving Chosen to pursue Kim Da-eun. Looking back, this makes the most sense because both Johnny and Daniel did not end up with their first loves, but instead found someone new. This was also the advice he told Sam in Mercy Part 2, though she did end up with Miguel after all. Miyagi and Daniel fighting against the skeletons did turn out to be a dream sequence, and it was nice to get some fan service of Daniel and Miyagi fighting side by side. We did finally get to see baby Laura as I predicted, and I was right about Johnny reopening the dojo as I predicted in my teaser and trailer breakdowns. Overall, I thought this final part was a very fitting way to wrap up the series. It tied up a lot of loose ends and made it feel like season 1 and 2 where we were focusing on core characters: Daniel, Johnny, Miguel, Robbie, Tori, and Sam. There were a lot of excellent pieces of symbolism and parallels, and I think that's what makes this show great. All of that being aside, it's been amazing to cover the show for the past 4 years, and maybe we'll be lucky to get spin-offs. I still plan to make more content based on the show, specifically remastering videos and also covering Karate Kid Legends. It's impossible to move on from the show because you know why? Cobra Kai never dies.